This is week 5 summary video. This week we learn about single case research design, also known as single subject research design. In the first week, we said the field of applied behavior analysis started to grow in the 1950s and 1960s, and the field began to expand, and two significant events marked the formal beginning of contemporary applied behavior analysis in 1968, which include publication of the Journal of Applied Behavior Analysis began, and the publication Some Current Dimensions of Applied Behavior Analysis by Baer, Wolf, and Risley. So now we read this article, and this is an article we must read if we are in the field of applied behavior analysis. So Baer et al., they provided recommendations for applied behavior analysis, which later became the field's defining characteristics. These defining characteristics state that applied behavior analysis should be applied, behavioral, analytic, technological, conceptual, effective, and capable of generalized outcomes. So, according to Baer et al., applied means in the applied behavior analysis, the researcher must investigate socially significant behaviors with immediate importance to the participant, to the stakeholder. Also, researchers must focus on the behavior in need of improvement, and the behavior must be measurable. Analytic means a researcher must demonstrate experimental control over the occurrence and non-occurrence of the behavior. So we have to describe the functional relation between independent variable and dependent variable. So let's move on to chapter 7. The understanding of human behavior stems from the uncovering of functional relation between behavior and the environment. Although precise measurement of behavior shows change over time, experimental analyses are critical in determining how a given behavior functions in relation to specific environmental events. Scientific investigations provide 3 levels of understanding: description, prediction, and control. The goal of experimental analysis in applied behavior analysis is to understand socially significant behaviors, as we know. Experimental analyses are conducted to investigate the changes in behavior in relation to environmental events. Experimental control is achieved when a predictable change in the dependent variable, which is behavior of interest, can be reliably produced by systematic changes in the independent variable, which is environmental events or intervention you have. Applied researchers are interested in the behavior of individual organisms and utilize within subject or single subject methods of analysis. With repeated measures over time. In behavior analytic research, variability is isolated and experimentally manipulated to better understand the environmental events, creating variable responding. Determinism is a major assumption of behavior analysis. Single subject research design, also known as single case research design, are the most commonly used research design in applied behavior analysis. Components of experiments in applied behavior analysis include the research question, multiple response measures, which is dependent variables, precise manipulation of the independent variable, careful observation and measurement, and ongoing visual inspection of resulting data patterns. Behavior analysis employs steady state strategy and baseline logic in the evaluation of behavior change over time. Baseline logic includes three elements: prediction, verification, and replication. Baseline serves as a control condition, and later the baseline will be compared with intervention data. Which means baseline levels of responding are established as an objective basis for evaluating the effects of the independent variable, which is the intervention. Therefore, we need to have stable baseline data before moving on to intervention phase. Chapter 8 focuses on two experimental tactics commonly used in applied behavior analysis research. The first one is reversal design. In this design, A is always baseline, B is always intervention. So when we say ABA design, it means baseline, intervention, and return to baseline. So that's ABA design, and it's called reversal design. The second one is the alternating treatment design, also known as multi-element baseline design. So in this design, researchers want to compare the effects of two or more treatments. The author provides an outline of the appropriate use of each design and their variations. But for our practicum report, we are going to use an A-B design, A baseline, B intervention. So we're not going to return to baseline. We are not going to return to baseline. So we are going to have only two, baseline and intervention phases. For your baseline, to better predict the data, we are going to have at least three stable baseline points. So before you implement intervention, after you set an objective for your student, you will see how the student is doing in terms of the objective you set before the intervention. So let's say your intervention is reinforcement. Then before you use the reinforcement to increase some behavior, the target behavior, you are going to observe the students more than 3 times in terms of the objective, the target behavior. So you will report how the student is performing in terms of the target behavior before intervention in his or her routine. And then you will move on to intervention phase, and you will have 5 intervention sessions. So you will deliver the punishment, not punishment, reinforcement for 5 different times, 5 different days, or 5 different sessions, and you will record the data, how the child is performing in terms of the objective when you deliver the intervention, which is the reinforcement. It can be reinforcement, it can be other interventions, but you will have 3 baseline, which means no intervention, and you will have 3 baseline sessions. And then when you see 3 stable baseline data, and then you will move on to intervention phase, and you will deliver 5 intervention sessions, and you will record the data. So you can compare the intervention before intervention and after intervention. If you are a student who is pursuing BCBA certificate, make sure you get these concepts correctly through this week's learning.